he can join it. That's the nice thing about this meeting. You can join at any time.
Okay. Madam Mayor, it is 9:03 and we are live.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the agenda meeting of April 13th. 13th? It's today the 13th? Yes, the 13th. April 13th. Can we have the roll?
Mayor Betty Rush.
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy.
If I can unmute myself and all that stuff, I'm here.
You're done. You're fine.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga.
Present.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Here.
And Commissioner Ronaldo Diaz is absent. We will allow him in when he comes.
Commissioner Maliga, you're looking rather sporty this morning.
I was gonna.
Maliga is not a morning person. We all know that. So
Neither is the mayor.
I don't get up and get my hair all fun and funky and I'm getting a haircut today. So there's that.
Well, you don't have to explain, but you look kind of sporty. It's kind of nice.
It's my new Barrett Jackson hat. I actually got to go to the Barrett Jackson auction last week, and it was on my bucket list, and it was exciting and fun and riveting, and billions of dollars in toys.
Big toys.
Yeah.
I was hoping that I didn't go, but I was somewhere in my life. I'll have another 1965 Dodge Dart Slant 6.
Nice. Yeah,
favorite car. My favorite car.
There were some pristine autos there, and being from Detroit, I truly appreciate them.
Oh, and Miss Davis, I'm sure. Same thing. So how are we doing, everybody? How's life in the Commission of Lake Worth and the everything?
I am super excited, you guys. After our meeting the other night, the workshop, I left on like such a yes, we're getting stuff done. And I thought that it was great conversation amongst all of us.
Yep.
And I was really excited. I even told Carmen that yesterday morning in our meeting. I feel as if, we've kind of been in a holding pattern for a year, us newly electeds, waiting for a CM and waiting for the election to be over. And now we're like, okay, it's time to step in and start going.
No,
listen, I want to say, I wish I can take the credit, but Mr. William Waters definitely came with a plan and laid it out very plainly and guided us through that discussion. So I give him all the credit, and he did a great job.
Yeah, no, he did good. He did really well. It was laid out. And frankly, when I saw the agenda, I said to you, Carmen, how are we going to get through all this?
Right.
And we did. I mean, it was really fairly, it was good. I was very happy. I think that we are, like Sarah said, we have a direction that we're going, and I think we're all pretty much on the same boat.
And I was excited we didn't go down too many rabbit holes.
We did. No.
We actually stayed focused on what the task was at hand, and it was good. I thought it was a great team meeting.
It's fun. So anything on anybody's mind heavy on? We have sort of a loose agenda for these meetings, which I sort of like. I sometimes pick to, does anybody got anything that they want to talk about right away before we do anything else?
I have two things, but I can wait for whenever.
No, go ahead. I'm still waking.
Huh?
I'm still waking up like Sarah.
I am a morning person.
Well, I think children makes a difference. You have to,
I love it. It's a fresh start. I sleep away everything that aggravated me the night before, and I wake up and I want to keep it going as long as possible before something new aggravates me. So try not to stay off on the wrong foot here.
Well, it's my body won't cooperate. I have to get all my joints moving before I can start working.
So we finally have a date planned for the advisory boards and to try to get those filled and everything like that. So with that, we had tossed out some ideas about additional boards. And I feel like if we are going to move forward with those, we need to do that so that we can advertise those boards and try to fill them during that meeting. And I have three that I wanted to mention. And one is like the mobility board. And if, William said last night that we are going to try to get a mobility study and plan and things done. So I do think, if we're going to talk about resident decals, like Commissioner Malega said, I know we've been tossing around the idea of metered parking, all of the different things that go into parking and mobility. I think the proposal for Dixie Highway that we heard when we first got in office, all those things are some significant changes. And I really think it's important that we have a board dedicated to evaluating those proposals and community input. because they're just significant. And I would hate for our residents to, I would hate for us to feel afraid of change, but I would hate for our residents to feel blindsided. So I do think that it's important to get some sort of board going there.
Okay, and like some boards are more general and some boards are more specific about what you have to, what qualifications you have to have in order to be on the board. Because I would, so what were you thinking along those terms? What do you, who do you think should not personally, but what do you think it should take to be on that board? What area of expertise or interest or what?
I think somebody who believes everybody should be forced to get around town using only their legs should be on the board. And I think somebody who only thinks cars should exist should be on the board. And then hopefully a lot of people in between, because I think you need all those different perspectives to really pick apart ideas, to like poke holes in them, bring up points that we can, look into and either alleviate fears or, like really take into consideration. So I'm not afraid of, opinions that are not aligned with mine or ours. I think it's healthy.
Better not be, right?
Yeah, I think it's
We'd
healthy
be
to
afraid
have
all the time.
perspectives on it. I wouldn't want to stack it all with
Right.
the same mindset. I don't think that's, because we have a variety of people and a variety of needs and views, and then we have economics that come into play, and so that's just my very broad thought about it. But
Yeah.
I was hoping maybe William, knowing more about what a mobility study would involve, might help guide us to like what would be the most productive type of or like Lauren work. It feels like William's department, and then oh God, Larry.
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 Like should be
Jamie.
involved in helping us craft what is the most useful board that's going to get us the most input, the most productive conversations.
And I just want to note it, I want to note it for the record that Commissioner Diaz is now present.
Great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, thank you.
We're talking about Kim's idea about having a mobility board. I think it's a good idea, and I'm very happy to hear you say that you want people from divergent aspects, because I have to say I take it for some reason. I know why. When I hear people talk about mobility, and it's you only have to walk a couple blocks, and the thing, we don't have a lot of drive-throughs, but there are people that go, oh, drive-throughs are horrible. Well, that's a very elitist look. That's a very, you got two kids in a, you want to run in for you want to get some McDonald's for your kids. You got two kids in car seats. You got to blah, 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 go in and right. So I'm a member of Strong Towns. I read it all the time, and I know they have a lot of things there about parking, and we don't, the cars thing. I'm an old fashioned girl, and I love my car, and it's, so I don't want it. Everybody that, with all due respect, Commissioner McVoy, everybody that, wants everybody to bicycle around or walk around. I think that's unrealistic. I think it's aspirational perhaps, but unrealistic. So it'll be an interesting conversation, no doubt, but I think we do need to have it. Thanks for bringing it up.
Well, one thought, I agree with Commissioner Stokes' suggestion that we have a range of views on it. And I certainly hear you, Mayor, that there are all sorts of folks in our city who have different needs. And while it might be aspirationally wonderful to not have gas guzzling cars around and eliminate them all, it's not likely to happen anytime soon. There are very good reasons we should be paying attention to emissions, but and looking at alternatives. But I totally hear you on the need for a range of mechanisms. And I think most people who are very focused on mobility also recognize that. So that's good. One quick thought on it is the TPA has offered to send us somebody to do a presentation for us on mobility plans, mobility issues, and they have a lot of experience with doing them with different cities around the county. So we might want to schedule that on a upcoming meeting as a prep for that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so let's put that. So now when is our meeting? when are the interviews for the boards? Let me look at the calendar.
I think it's not till June, but we wanted time to know,
Okay.
like 6 weeks to notice,
Right.
so we
Or
need
so
to
that
have our
gives-
boards
Right.
finalized and ready to go before we send out the notices.
June
That would be
11th,
June 11th.
is the date. Yep.
June
June
11th.
11th?
Yep.
Thank you. And what other boards were you thinking of? I hear
Well,
you.
so the ones we already have, the mobility, I know Commissioner Malega had brought up business and we just never got around to figuring out exactly, putting real definition around it. And then the Blue Way Trail C51 board that currently exists, if we're going to, we thought, well, they haven't met, they're not doing anything. We thought about sunsetting it, but then people thought we were
The
like,
Canal 51 board, the Canal
Yeah,
51. Yeah.
and there was a reaction in the community of,
Yeah,
they
there
thought we
was.
were like trying to quietly sunset it so that we could go forward with something. I don't know, but we had talked about maybe expanding it, renaming it from Canal 51 to the Blue Way Trail, since that whole thing has been designated a Blue Way Trail, and expanding the scope, because right now it's only about like a boat lift. And like, what is it that we want to see the Blue Way Trail go?
I was interested when that pushback came, because I honestly, and I need to educate myself, what is the I mean, we have a piece of the C51 canal in the city. What is the purpose of a whole committee about the C51 canal? I'm not challenging it. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I was thinking, since we have a new commissioner here who happens to be our water keeper, I've seen him out there with the little lagoonies mucking around in that the offshore of that canal. So I was hoping not to I don't like it when people give me jobs to do, but I was hoping that possibly Commissioner Diaz might have some ideas of how we could beef up that board and make it a little more purposeful outside of just that one limited scope that they were originally given.
Well, I
So
think
I
that the C51 canal board has been around, I think, longer than the talking about that boat lift and the.
No, I think it arose when the boat lifting and development along the canal became a hotter
What was-
item.
I wonder when it was formed.
But
Sarah?
regardless of the history, I would also be very supportive, having just finally gotten my folding kayak out of the garage and assembled, and excited about being back on the water more often. I like the idea, since we do have canals around us, not a lot directly. The C51 is the access to a whole network of canals and lakes. And then, of course, the Lake Worth Lagoon. The idea of having some sort of water-oriented board, both recreation, water quality, safety, a variety of things, I think makes some sense. And looking for ways. I know that quite a while ago, Commissioner, I'm drawing a blank on her name. She was very tall.
Yeah.
Susan.
Alvale.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. She was very active with getting the Blue Ways Trail set up at the county level and with some city involvement. And I think that is worth us putting some energy into.
Well,
Well,
I have
Go
to
ahead,
say,
Sarah.
I have to say that, I was a little astounded to see that we were the only municipality not listed as a supporting municipality on the Blue Way Trails website. And that kind of blew my mind, because it's right in our backyard, right? Like it literally flows to Lake Worth Beach, and we're the only municipality that's not showing support for, interconnecting those Blue Way Trails and preserving the environment and making it accessible. So
Maybe the fact-
if anything, I would love to see this new advisory board focus on, how do we become, a partner in it? How do we make sure that we're protecting the environment and the surrounding community?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I understand what you're saying. My dilemma, or what am I about that, is our section of the Blue Way Trail, the way the people are envisioning it, includes that boat lift in Spillway Park, which I don't think we've ever discussed it publicly. Whether we support or don't support it. I know how I feel about it. But here's another thing about on the same topic of water, that public area, just the northwest corner that we talked about, which is public land. And Ronaldo, you probably have been there because you've done this, a lot of this stuff. There,
Yeah.
we have, are you familiar, the most northwest corner of the city is public land. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
little, okay. There's access to the canal. So my thought would be, this is talking about Commissioner McVoy, you want to take your kayak south down, the Blue Way Trail through the lakes. There's a perfect opportunity for us to try to get a grant, and I'm looking for support or whatever to make that actually a viable launch place for kayaks and paddle boards and canoes and stuff that the city, because we don't have access to all of that at this point.
Yep. I'm
Dixie,
certainly, and having just launched at MacArthur Park last night or even afternoon, a kayak launch doesn't have to have much to it. It's
Right.
just in the
but that
trees.
whole area, we should take a field trip up there. If you go up there and you walk down that path to the end, I mean, it's all overgrown. It needs to be dredged, like cleaned up and made a place to I think it's a great amenity because right now we don't have any access to that southern part of the Blue Way Trail.
I do know that the residents of Vernon Heights want to be at the table with whatever happens, and as well as Sunset Ridge. They are not in favor of that becoming a park. They are not in favor of traffic going
Well,
through there.
sometimes,
I'm
we'll
just
just have
saying-
to talk. I know,
I'm just saying,
I've gotten some
we
messages
need to
myself.
we need to take consideration of the people whose that literally is their backyard. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, we certainly will.
Yeah,
But we
and
also can't, let's not stop progress for perfection, okay? I just got a text from Sylvina, the C-51 canal was created, the board was created in April of 2017. Thank you, Sylvina.
Yeah.
So, because I think it's a serious issue and we may need to talk about is that, what about that boat lift?
We do
And
need
if
to
we-
talk about it.
If we don't
But-
support the boat lift, they ain't gonna want us on their committee.
Well, we also, my thought is from when I first came on board, it seems like we want a real partnership, right? So we know what the people to the west of us want. So I think this board is an opportunity for us to really come together with what do we want? And so that we're not just like hopping onto somebody else's project and vision, that we make sure that we're doing the best for our residents in Vernon Heights, over here in College Park. Like, it's the only park in the entire District 3.
Spillway Park, it's a great
It's the
park.
only park. So I think that's why I'm excited to expand the scope and really dig into, it's not just about the boat lift. What do we want? What do we want?
What
And
about Bryan Park and boats? We're having a big issue with boats at Bryan Park now, which I love seeing all the boats there. I think we should somehow figure out a way to make that viable, that we don't have there's problems with it, and try to address those. So maybe it would be like the water committee.
Right. I know Ronaldo's been trying to get in here.
He's muted though.
I
So
know.
he can't talk.
yeah, I definitely have a lot of things to say about all those things. Vernon Heights, there's definitely a segment of that neighborhood that wants houses and not on that property. But there's
It's public.
also
There's Brenna, let me stop you. And William, I think Christy told me from Glenn's office, it's zoned public now, but there's apparently an LDR future land use of single family. But then I got a message from Christy that there's a deed restriction that it can't, that single family home designation can't happen. And Glenn, I'm looking to you to back that up. But I think when I got it from Christy, it was, it shouldn't be in the future land use as single because it's deed restricted, because the state gave it to us. The state gave it to us, I think, is what happened. And so we can't build on it. We can't put homes on it. But that's just what I heard. Sorry, I interrupted you. Ronaldo, you don't have to mute yourself every time.
oh, I did just in case. Where was I going with that? Yeah, I mean, that was my question, if there was a conservation easement or something like that. But I just wanted to point it out that there is a petition going around in that neighborhood of people who want to build houses on it. But I have heard a pretty even balance on both sides. And, I definitely have my feelings on public access and having green areas. But as far as this board, similar to you, Mayor Rush, I wasn't totally familiar or, not fully understanding what exactly that board's goal or intention was, but I definitely have a lot of thoughts on what it should be. Yes, on like the public access, and I would love to see improvement at the Spillway Park. I use it a lot, especially with our Lagoonies programs and a lot of our other issues. And, so I would love to see improvements and have put a lot of thought into what that park could be. A lot of it, it's, famously popular for birders, for example. There's some pretty good trees there, but it's also a big grass field. And, I always think like a good example of what it could be would be like if you've ever been to Lantana Nature Preserve, probably similar size park, but they have a pretty substantial little trail through what used to be essentially a spill landfill. And they turned it into a really nice natural habitat, and it does exceedingly well with birders. But then on the other side of Spillway as well, or technically both sides of the park, there's a lot of interest and a lot of want to bring back the fishing docks. And I think that's important, especially if we're talking about mobility and, ADA, because that park right now, like that park will always be popular with fishermen. And right now I look at it almost as a liability, especially if you bring little kids and stuff, because it's very rocky. It's not a very safe place to go fishing without a dock. And, so there's a lot of room for improvement. So I think this board would have, part of their intention is to improve those access areas and whatnot. But I think there should be another side of this board. And, when we look for people to join on, we want them to have a level of expertise, because I think the other side of that board should be also to participate in some really important, federal and state policy changes that are being made that are going to affect us tremendously. Because that park, the reason why I use it so much for our Lagoonies programs, we always start there. Day one of the Lagoonies program is always at Spillway Park. And that is because that is the start of all of our pollution issues and our environmental issues. And there's a lot of room of improvement, and not just in the physical place, but also the policy that, for example, determines how much Lake Okeechobee water gets sent our way. That determines our, probability of getting exposed to cyanobacteria, all the, major water quality regulations and issues that are constantly changing. So, I think we would be really well served if we had, a group, and I think this board is that option that's going to participate, make public comments on behalf of city, or propose public comments on behalf of Lake Worth and so on and so forth on these really important state and federal policy changes.
Well, I think that it sounds pretty appropriate that if we're going to have, we all sort of have our committees that we work with. Kim with the education. I don't know, this might be a wild thing to say, but maybe Ronaldo should be the person that deals with the water, can be the water committee people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Right. So you should talk to Carmen. Again, qualifications. It's who's gonna be on it. Some boards it doesn't matter quite as much, but these are pretty specific. So Ronaldo, you'll talk to Carmen and Glenn and get that moving.
Carmen has her hand up.
Carmen has her hand up. Hi, Carmen.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Just to give you an update on the boards, we do have a total of about at least 9 boards on the list, but that does not include education. If you include that, that's 10. And we have vacancies on at least 8 of them. So I just want to give you an update of where we are and what our interview process would look like on June 11th. And we'll have a number of boards with vacancies. And today I'm hearing that we're interested in having a mobility, or resurgence of the C-51 canal, or may change that into a different name or focus. And then the possibility of a business board. Is that what we're speaking of today?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if Kim's done yet. She's
No, I'm
got.
done. Those
Okay.
are the ones that we've talked about before. I feel like we need some closure around.
Yeah, no,
So,
I think that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So that will
Um,
make 13 boards. And I do want to keep in mind that we do have staff. As you've heard, several times that we don't have a deep bench, but that does take in staff time. So when we look at this, we'll see how we can manage in supporting the additional boards.
Let me ask you a question. My understanding is the education board, because they're not voting on anything, doesn't have to operate in the sunshine. Am I correct on that?
right, it's the task force.
It's a task
That's
force. So what
And
if
we don't use staff time.
Right, so I'm thinking instead of
Okay.
calling these boards, maybe we should call them task, have them operate as
Committee.
task force.
Task force.
Because actually, that makes it better for the people, because then Ronaldo and his people can go down to the water and start digging stone, doing what they have to do without this, I don't know.
Well, but we can't make any formal recommendations to the city, so there are definitely a lot of limitations there. So
Oh,
I
okay, you
would hate
can't.
for the parking.
Right.
Okay.
That's what
We're gonna
Glenn
come
had.
back and tell you what's going on. And then as a body, we can decide, how we want to address that. But they can't recommend, option A over option B.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I think that would be really tricky with a parking board.
I think that,
Oh, well,
I
yeah.
think that the business board and the parking board need to be giving us advice on the
Right.
changes that we're making and on obviously any ordinances or resolutions that we're looking at and how it's going to affect
Yeah,
the business
yeah.
owners. and
I'm just trying to
business
help staff.
Yeah.
No,
and
I
make-
hear what you're saying loud and clear.
Yeah.
Does
Um,
the tree board doesn't take up staff time, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Do they?
They need a little help with that. I was going to mention them.
What's going on with the tree board?
Well, the tree board tends, over the years that I've seen it, which is probably going on 15, if not 20 years, tends to get people with a lot of expertise in trees, surprisingly, often native, often edible, often whatever trees, shade trees, effects on heat island effects and all sorts of things. But we tend as a city to not always have paid a lot of attention to them.
Right.
I think I would certainly like to see us do a little better. I'm aware that somebody, I don't know quite whether it's part of the city or somebody else, had been planting additional trees along 12th Avenue South, which is great.
That's part of the grant. I was just going to say too, that I made sure that that Palm Beach County Sheriff's part of that fusion grant, that they reached out to our tree board and Sam Goodstein and made sure that the tree board is okay with whatever trees they pick for our city.
Apparently that didn't work because
I think-
the trees have already been made and it didn't get to the tree board. So that was just one example of, let's make sure that our process works. And get the tree board involved, make sure that they, that we use them for advice. It's a concentration of expertise on it and tends to be people who've been here a long time, so they know the city well. So let's do that.
Yeah.
So just a comment, I would go with the assumption that all the boards are going to be sunshine boards.
Right.
Because invariably they're going to give some kind of advice. I know Carmen mentioned the staffing concerns. No, and also I think about the bench of residents. You have 13 boards. If you're having an average of 5 people per board, that's 60 or 70 residents. Are there that many residents that really you're going to be able to count? Because we already have vacancies on 8 of those boards.
We're going to find out and we're going to publicize it. And I think that this with term limits coming in now, it's especially important to get people involved on a city board, to get their foot in the door, to understand a little bit how this works. So I understand what you're saying, Glenn. And I think it's going to be in, because we always have had trouble getting people on boards. But hopefully with some of the younger people coming into town and, new faces coming into town, and if we promote it heavily, it's an excellent point and we're going to find out.
I think they're going to appeal to different sectors as well, like the parking mobility. We don't have anything similar to that. I think that there's a lot of interest in our town about those issues. So
I can name a few people that would pay to get on that board.
Yeah.
So,
Another
Madam
thing,
Mayor-
and along, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Go ahead, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to suggest maybe we can have a discussion at one of our meetings and we can come up with, we'll bring the follow-up on each board that you're suggesting today with the purposes and direction, and have a more in-depth discussion at one of our commission meetings to talk specifically on each board, and we'll come with recommended qualifications and other thoughts about each board.
Okay, great. Along those kind of the same lines about citizen participation, I don't know how many of you were around for these. There were two things that happened in the aughts, when we're having all the hurricanes. We had two events that the city sponsored that were highly successful. One was the Municipal Institute. It was a wonderful program. It was like 20 or 25 people. We met once a week in the evenings. 1 week it was the water department. 1 week it was the building department. And we went, from place to place. They had just gotten their camera truck. So they were so excited about showing us how they can go down a pipe with a camera. And then there would be pizza or sandwiches. And it was a really good team. Erica Whitfield, I was on it. Erica Whitfield, it was a very good team building experience to get to know how the city works. Because one of the things, the city shouldn't, that sort of thing, but they don't know why things happen. And sometimes, most of the time, there's a reason for why things happen. The other one was the CERT, the community, response team, community something response, CER, community emergency response team. And I just drove through a city that was advertising that they were starting their CERT program. And that was a very good program, sponsored by the, it was Lake Worth Police at the time, and the fire department and the building department about emergency. We haven't had a hurricane in a long time, but we all got trained on how to search a building, it was really an amazing thing because, those of us that remember Francis and whatever their names were, those horrible ladies that visited us. And then, of course, Wilma. So it was, we never really had to use it, but it was, again, another way to, citizen involvement is what's going to make this city, help us along because, instead of, I talk too much. So those are the two things that I'd like to, and that's a budget issue because there was, a budgeted item, I'm supposed to budget for those two things.
I think they're both good things to fire up. There also is somebody might, the city manager might remember the name, but there's a national training program that might overlap with that one on emergency preparedness, and you can certify at various levels. That may be relevant to that too, to the preparedness one.
Cool.
So yeah.
I love both of them. I think it might be easier to get the emergency response team up and running sooner than the Municipal Institute. I love the Municipal Institute. I just know we've, with all the workshops that we're having this summer for the budget, with getting the town hall started that we're rotating through every quarter, I think we need to get through the budget season first before instituting something.
Right, but I'm bringing it up so that we can plan for, even, I'm not saying next week, next, so that we know it's going to, even if it's not going to come into effect until next fall.
Right. And did it happen once a year or how often?
It went on for a couple of years. I don't think it went on for terribly long, but it was 1 or 2 years that they did it. Again, I don't remember. Maybe Eric remembers, but
I thought it was longer than that. That it was.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
That's great.
How long,
maybe there's a way to identify a quiet time. Not budget season, obviously, but where's there an 8-week window where our departments are a little freer and can kind of, it's we spread the love. It's one department.
I can hear them laughing in the background.
Yeah.
When things slow down. Okay, so let's just put them in the works.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else is going on? What do we need to? Go ahead.
I have a number of things. I have a couple of specific request ones relating to upcoming meetings and or events. I received a request from Sierra Club that came on April 9th after the deadline for the April 19 meeting agenda, and they would like to do, well, it's apparently, I assume national, I don't know, National Dark Skies Week starts on April 22nd, Earth Day. And we have on and off in the past as a city, it's actually written into some of our, I want to say LDRs or some of our code stuff that we are ascribe or we aspire. There you go. Thank you, Mayor.
It's my word of the day.
Good. It's a good one. Aspire to be dark skies compliant, and we are to varying degrees. But they would like a proclamation to be on the April 19th agenda. So I'm requesting that from my colleagues to make a late addition because I didn't know
Things
about
like
it.
that. Things like that I've got, I mean, I have no issue with something. It's not, doesn't require this. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any problem with it, let me know, but that's
Okay,
not.
cool. Next one is I also received a recent request, and this one doesn't have a deadline issue. I don't, well, not to put on a meeting. The Haitian Center of the Palm Beaches contacted me and asked whether we could do an event, and I want to say it's May 19, but it might be May 14. I mean, it's one of those two.
That's Haitian flag. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I lost that guy's phone number, and I've been involved with that. It's the Haitian Flag Day is May 14th, and that is going to be at the that's going to be at the high school football field. They've given them the football field.
There's two different groups that are interested in things, so it's slightly complicated.
Right. I'm glad that I want to straighten that out. Thank you.
I believe that Reggie is involved with the one at the Howard Field at the high school.
Howard Field is not the high school.
Well, maybe I missed, somebody might know.
There's a confusion. I saw something on Facebook too about a Haitian Day, and I think that's at Howard Park. And now there's Laura, who would know this. Hi.
Good morning.
Why don't you fill us in?
So Commissioner McBoy, May 14th is the request you received for the Cultural Plaza. And then the city is partnering with Miss Reggie for a Haitian Heritage event in conjunction with the Flag Day, the 21st at Howard Field.
So the 21st is the city-sponsored one at Howard Field with Reggie, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because the one at the Haitian, and that's the 14th as well. That's the 21st.
21st is with.
Did you have something? Did you mention something about the 14th?
That was the date Commissioner McBoy was just bringing to the table.
Okay, and that's the Haitian Flag Day. That's Haitian Flag Day, and that's the Haitian Center of the Palm Beaches.
Correct, and their request was to do a flag raising similar to what we did last year at City Hall, and then similar to the Martin Luther King Day, I don't know whether you call it a march or a procession or a walk or whatever, from City Hall to the Cultural Plaza where the rest of their program would be.
But okay, now I'm very confused because that's the day that I know that on the 14th of May at the high school, and I think it's that group. What's that man's name? It begins with an L.
Salusa Basquin, I think is.
No, that's not okay. See, we've got some. All right, I'm glad that because there's a conflict here. The Haitian
activity that was going to be at the high school is the same Haitian Center one, and there were some difficulties with doing it at the high school. At least that's what I've been told.
Oh, okay.
So I suspect, but we should verify certainly that they are the same, but it got moved from the high school to doing from City Hall to the Cultural Plaza.
Oh, if that's the case, great. But I mean, it sounds like we're two. Yeah.
Can we definitely verify to make sure? Because we don't want to have 5 different activities in 4 different.
And I lost that gentleman's phone number and name, so I'm having a little difficulty.
Commissioner McBoy, if I can assist, if you can provide me the contact person, we will get clarity on the events and the requests.
I have that highlighted in my pre-agenda meeting notes here to do that. So yes, I will do that as soon as we're up.
And we'll get it all straightened out.
I just found it's Jimmy Jacques. who I'm talking, who's the one that contacted me, the Haitian Center of the Palm Beaches, which is a newly formed group that was talking about the high school. So let's hope that same group is just moved.
I think
I'll-
that's the same group. It's the
Okay,
same.
cool.
So, but let's sort that out.
Let's figure out where to go. All right, May 14th, Haitian Flag Day. I was also gonna have a, when I spoke with him, when we were running last year, I asked, Salusa and a few people, so, what are you gonna do for the Haitian community? And I said, well, I don't really think it's helpful for me to walk into the Haitian community and say, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. What I really have wanted from the Haitian community, and I've spoken with Mr. Jacques about it, is, what do you feel you need? How can we help you? Right. So I'm planning on having a night, hopefully down at the Osborne Center, have the Haitian community come in and just address some of the issues that they're having, that I would sponsor that night, to do that. I've got to follow up with them on that.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. And of course,
Madam Mayor, anytime anybody wants, Eves is more than willing to let anyone come on the air on a Saturday afternoon between 2 and 3, free of charge on the
Okay, good.
Haitian radio station. I go every quarter, just to kind of do a community update on things that are important. Like I talked about COVID, I talked about the elections, the questions. So it's open to anybody who sits on the
text me his
dais
number.
down.
If you would
And
text his number.
They just ask you to book a couple weeks sometimes ahead of time, so they know what's coming and they can, they can announce it and they can, kind of garner the excitement of it. And you'd be surprised how many people come in, call in with questions and just thank you for reaching out to the community. And then Eves does do the translation, so you do not need to know Creole to go on.
Right. Is that the one on Lantana Road?
No, it is it's on the Delray, just south of Delray Beach border on 95 on Federal Highway.
Great. Okay. If you could shoot me his number, because I want to go on and talk about that.
I'll actually share an email with everybody just so you guys can all have it. And if you want to
Thank you.
schedule to go on, go right ahead.
Thank you.
I have a couple other things if I still have time and room. I'll try
Well,
to keep.
we got 15
Or-
minutes.
Well, I don't want to
Go
take up
ahead.
15 minutes.
Oh.
On the upcoming, this would be, I guess, a meeting advance notice thing. So I guess that's what this is for, pre-agenda. For the electric utility meeting for April, I believe we were informed at the last one that they would be bringing the next bond issue for us to vote on at that meeting. And I would like to make sure that we have a little bit of time at that meeting for discussion. Not obviously, we're going to discuss approving the bond, and I'm in favor of that, but to discuss a couple things that we might want to build into that bond. And one is to use a small amount of resources of it to actually develop an integrated resources plan for the utility. It's a technical term that utilities typically do, where they look at, it's a future planning document. So they look at what their current resources are, look at what the technology is doing, and explicitly talk about how they're going to do all that stuff and what they want to do. We are very well focused, as we had an excellent presentation on last time, hardening the system, the SHRIP program and SHRIP 1, 2, and 3 or whatever, which is great, but we do not have an integrated resources plan. So I'd like to have a little item discussion for that. Ed Liberty, the utility director, has also mentioned that he would love to do some of these forward-looking things on new technologies and energy conservation, energy resources, and all that stuff. But that it's his plate is very full, and so he suggested the possibility of having a dedicated staff person who would focus on that.
An added staff person?
Yes, somebody to specifically focus on those issues. It's not uncommon in utilities now to have that, similar to what cities as a whole sometimes do have and Ronaldo can probably help me with it. There are different.
Let's hear from Ed.
Are you talking about like sustainability coordinators / green
No,
policy?
I think, Chris, you and Ed have spoken about this, correct?
No,
It
Ed
sounds-
has it in public meetings as well, and I'm certainly interested in it. I was happy to hear Ed mention it. So I'd like to just leave some space on the agenda on whenever the next electric utility one at the end of the month comes up for us to talk about that. Maybe we can, present some stuff that other utilities do, both for
Well,
integrated.
Okay, I see Ed has come online, and hi, good morning, Mr. Liberty.
Hey, good morning.
Hi.
Okay, let me add some
I like the
clarity.
vehicles behind you, Ed.
That's the old
Yeah.
Lake Worth Bridge.
It is. I think that was
remember
the day that the beach tie was installed. No pun intended. But I did find this folder on the city's interdepartmental drive. It had these old postcards, and I thought this would make a nice background. There's some really cool stuff there if you want to surf through the interdepartmental drive and look at those photos. Anyway, let me provide some clarification on this issue. First of all, the bond issue is strictly for capital items, not for operating expenses. So we're not borrowing money to operate our utility, we're borrowing money to make capital improvements. So I'll come back to the commissioner's suggestion in a second. So the bond issue is specific to capital. It has two large pieces. One is kind of capital for new trucks, building renovations, things like that. And the second, by far the biggest piece, is system hardening and reliability improvement, which is infrastructure. So funding an integrated resource plan out of that bond money would really probably not be appropriate. I would yield to finance for that decision, but that's really an operating expense. In terms of the commissioner's concern or desire for an integrated resource plan, we do need to update our resource plan. So if you remember, the plan that we did in 2018 was a resource plan. However, admittedly, it was not an integrated resource plan because it only looked at supply side resources. An integrated resource plan looks at demand side resources as well as supply side. And the demand side resources are typically a fraction of the percentage of the total plan, because you can't meet all of your resource needs simply by demand. And I think even the commissioner's not suggesting that, but demand side resources should be a part of an integrated plan. The last one that we had done was done for us by Power Engineers and Horizons Energy. Horizons was a subcontractor to Power Engineers in 2018. We had received approval from Power Engineers to contract directly with Horizons Energy to freshen up and update that resource plan. We have to contact them. I will be doing that in the coming week or so, and speaking with them about updating a plan and having it include a demand side segment of that as well. That would be a few percentage points, probably being realistic of what could be achieved, and then we would bring that forward. In terms of the staffing suggestion, the staffing suggestion was revolved around an energy conservation manager and greenhouse gas reduction manager. So that would be one person whose focus would be operation of our conservation group, which is the group that does the energy audits, and bringing online all of the resources that we needed to have to really focus on reducing our greenhouse gas contribution as a city. That would also include bringing on board, for example, the Solar Energy Loan Fund as a low cost provider for energy efficiency initiatives for low and middle income households in the city, pursuing grants, things like that. So that's not necessarily a part of the IRP process. Sounds a little confusing, but I hope I put it into neat little buckets for everybody. The staffing position and the generation of the resource plan would be operating expenses that would be funded out of the operating budget. So we're building that into the operating budget that you'll see at the workshops. So there'll be an increase in costs, of course, to do that. Not saying they should.
Ed, on one of our utility agendas, can we have a presentation about these two different things, just so we can all get on the same page of what is an integrated resource plan, examples? Like, I think if we could just have some presentations, and then also that other position.
Sure. So I can give you just a very, very high level overview, so don't leave the meeting with a lot of mystery to it. A resource plan is simply looking ahead, usually in the range of 10 to 20 years. What how you're going to fulfill your needs for energy in the city, specifically with the utility, electric energy. So where is the electricity going to come from? What technologies might be involved? What's the cost of those technologies? What the impact would be depending on various fuel options. So for example, the resource plan that we did in 2018 called for adding significant amounts of solar. So we actually exceeded what they suggested because the prices that they predicted came down much faster than they were predicting. So actual prices came down. So we went big into solar with 36.5 megawatts. I think they were suggesting around 25 or 26. We went to 36.5. And the other part of it might you look at is when you're looking at your forward resources is, are there things that I can do to reduce demand? So the commissioner has talked about things like demand response or energy conservation. Instead of adding resources to supply energy, you may add resources to decrease the amount of energy that you use. I point out that the city already did a substantial amount of work in 2016 and 2017 with the Siemens performance contract and energy efficiency throughout all city buildings. That doesn't mean that we did it once and we're done, but we can continue looking at that going forward. There's also the concept of what's called demand response. So demand response is a technology that we would use to actually proactively shut off customers' equipment at certain times of the day to conserve energy. And this would be something that would be done remotely with customers that volunteer to have that, provide that service. They would get paid a fee to do that. This is what's typically done around in other utilities. FPL does it, for example. The concern with that is the investment can be significant and the results of the demand response, in other words, how much reduction in energy you actually get is not readily predictable or reliable because customers can opt out of the program. So it gets complicated.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Ed, I don't mean to interrupt. I think I would really love the suggestion. I love the suggestion of Commissioner Stokes of having a discussion because I want to make sure the commission really understands the integrated resource plan and all it entails. And I want to do it justice. And I think that the brief synopsis is great today. Let's reserve some deep talk at the discussion.
Right,
For the
like
second time today. I know we don't have much time.
So you can fill us on where we are now and what we came up with in 2018 and where we are planning on heading and what work we still have left to do. Like I'd like to see it.
So we'll do it at a public meeting. I know that Commissioner, I believe Commissioner Malega has something she'd like to bring up. We're getting close on time. Sarah?
Right, good. Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing I wanted to bring up is, it kind of doubles back to the advisory boards. We require advisory board volunteers to fill out documents, sometimes financial, if depending on what that board that board entails, and prove their residency. And we also have an attendance policy. Those are three things that we don't even do ourselves as a board of commissioners that I really think we need to take a look at. The fact that the commission doesn't have a job description. We don't have a requirement for how many meetings we need to attend, and we don't have to prove our residency or any of our financial stuff. So I just want us to be equitable.
True, we have to.
Please don't interrupt me, sir. Wait, hello. I just think that if we're going to be asking this of advisory volunteers, that we need to reflect back on and maybe look at and talk to the city attorney on the things that our city commission has to do. There is no job description. There is no requirement for how many meetings we must attend or must not attend before we can be deseated or asked to step down. You sign a little disclosure that says, yep, I live here. But if you're on an advisory board, you have to prove that you live here by a lease or by a utility bill that's in your name. So I just want to make sure that we're being equitable for the people that are volunteering their time and making sure that we uphold ourselves to the same standards as electeds. That's all.
Well, all right. Okay, thank you.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but it's, job description. I think, I don't know that a job description for, I challenge that, right?
Right, but we don't even have an attendance policy for city commissioners. Or
I think we have to hear from the city attorney on we go through the whole supervisor elections. We're not
right.
there's like I feel like
And
this
we can't be removed if we don't show, I mean, we could be, if there could be a vote for recall if we don't start not showing up.
But there's nothing on the books for any of that.
Well, all right, okay, well, certainly, Glenn?
Yeah, is this a city issue or state or like?
I think it would be a city issue if we're gonna make up
County?
rules about stuff, but
Requirements of the commission.
Well, who
and their
governs our
roles.
job?
I mean, you can't do it like with a board, you know, we can, I think it's 3, if you miss 3 whatever it is, there's a rule about attendance. I mean, then we, as the commission, can say, hey, you've been absent, we're gonna kick you off the board. But that's, I mean, we're not appointed. I mean, it's a big,
It's a different, it's
Yeah.
not, I hear where Commissioner Malega is,
and I don't disagree with you, but yeah,
but it isn't an apples to apples comparison.
right.
All right, Glenn?
So,
So you don't think that we should have to prove our residency or make sure that are the forwarding coming, I'm not even talking about us, but in the future commissioners have to attend certain amount of meetings? I mean, you don't think that we should be
No.
held to the same standard?
Because we don't, it's not the same standard, it's a different, Chris is right, it's a different apples and oranges.
But
We
we're
don't
actually
get-
being held to a lower standard, I believe. That's just my opinion.
All right,
but you could always create your own rules for your own meetings, but, you know, in terms of once you're elected, you're elected.
Yeah,
And
you're
to
elected.
be removed from office is not something generally that you can do yourself. So if one of you did something horrible, the best you could do would be to ask the governor to remove that person.
Right.
Or citizens can do a recall election. But they're almost all processes that are outside of your ability to complete. You can always start something. Again, you could pass a resolution asking the government to do something. You could censure one of your own members. But again, that's essentially a slap on the wrist. How do you police yourselves?
and I don't think it's ever been an issue for commissioners not to
all
show
your
up
own
at a
internal
meeting.
rules.
Has it ever been an issue?
My former predecessor missed more than 35% of the meetings, including budget workshops, and nobody ever said anything about it. So, I mean, it has been an issue in the past of
All right, well, then
previous commissioners. And I feel that as if we're here to serve the public, then we should have this, at least some kind of guidelines or benchmarks, if you will, that we need to do if we're asking the advisory boards to do it. That's all. I mean, we're asking people to volunteer their time. And if you can't show up for 3 meetings, whatever, we can kick you off the board. Well, look at how busy Kim Stokes is. I mean, she's got 2 kids. Like, I mean, life happens. But, you know, we can't, I just feel like we're a little bit harder on the advisory board members than we are on ourselves. And I want us to think about elevating that. You know, again, if advisory board members have to prove that they live in the city and we don't, how does that look upon us? If they have to attend so many meetings and we don't, I think there's a discrepancy there. That's all.
All right, thank you. I see that we are out of time. Anything burning that anybody needs to bring up for 2 minutes before we end?
I just want to say one thing.
Madam Mayor,
publicly.
it's Juan real quick. I just
Juan.
reminded the department directors to stay on this Zoom link afterwards.
Okay. We don't get to see Juan's shiny face.
Right.
We just get- There he is. Hey.
I was having
I'm
a hard time toggling over. But no,
Okay,
we're
so-
having a department director meeting afterwards, so we're just keeping the Zoom link up. Just
Oh, good idea. Good idea. So, all right, thanks, everybody. I know Chris and I had a very multicultural experiences I was at 2 Ramadan feasts last week. It was very interesting. There's a couple more coming up. And I hear the taco, kudos to the staff for the taco festival. I was not able to make it, but I hear it was a resounding success on everybody's part. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Okay.
echo.
Okay. Anything else before we?
I wanted to ask, I don't want to violate sunshine or anything, but I don't know if anybody remembers all these books we got when we first took office, and they kind of they just got set aside for me for a while, but they're all from, I think, the finance department, written by the Government Finance Officers Association. And I've talked to Bruce about economic incentives because we've been talking a lot about incentives, and we did last night as part of that workshop. And he did email me a 7-page excerpt specifically about the role of finance and economic incentives. And I just would ask that he can email it to everybody and they
Well,
can.
could
it's
you
only
just
7
forward
pages.
it to us? Could
Okay,
you
I
just
just don't
forward?
know what I feel like, yeah, I just don't know.
Is that Glenn?
Sunshine.
Is that okay if she forwards us? the
I will
email
send
from
it.
Yeah.
All right,
Carmen,
Carmen will send it.
I'll send it to everyone.
And then I'd love
Okay.
us to talk about some of the things that we see in there too. So,
Yeah, the budget is gonna come up fast and it's, you know, some of us are more adept at numbers, Miss Maliga, than others. But I've got to get deeper into it this year because I realized, you know, during the year we said, well, what about this? Well, it's not budgeted. So that's what I'm talking about, the CERT and the Municipal Institute and stuff like that. So it's a pleasure to work with everybody. Commission, I think it's time for us to check out and leave our staff to their wonderful business.
Happy Holy Week. Happy Easter to everybody. Happy Good Friday. Enjoy the long weekend.
Passover's coming, Ramadan. It's a big month. It's a big spiritual month. So thank you.